Us,
Us.
us. Welcome everyone. Unfortunately today, Pat can't be with us, but I've managed to convince another one of our wider Kyokushin family to pop along and have a bit of a chat. Philip here. I'll get him to do his proper introduction in a minute. But yeah, as I've said in previous talks, it's really, I think, essential that we get as many people on as we can throughout the series and sort of just have a bit of a yarn about the ins and outs of training in Kyokushin in Japan, and everyone's got a different story and different experiences. So Philip, yeah, I'll hand it over to you. Just if you could start off with giving us a basic introduction of yourself, obviously where you're from, what you're doing now, how you got into the training, stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I'm from Dublin, Ireland, and I've been into martial arts, interested in martial arts pretty much my whole life. When I was a boy, I used to do taekwondo, and I got not. It wasn't too. I didn't quit like straight away. I got to blue belt, red tag, which was next to that is red belt, and then red belt, black tag, and then black belt. So it was pretty close.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of regret not sticking it out just to have another black belt to add to the collection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But just to have on the resume. But it was good. It gave me a kind of a base, and a lot of things in karate were very similar. They just had different names, very similar techniques. And I later found out why that was, which is, we both know why.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, and I did a little bit of judo, not much, and then I did Bujinkan. I don't know if you know that one.
Yes, I've heard of it. Yeah, not
Yeah,
too familiar with it, but I have heard of it. Yeah,
that was kind of popular, like in the early '90s.
right.
There's a lot of people were, I want to be a ninja.
Yeah. All the movies coming out and everything. Yeah,
I tried a bit of that, and anyway, I came over to Japan the first time in '97. Just for like me and a bunch of Irish guys, we all graduated the same year, and one of the guys had been in Japan he stayed because he studied Japanese and business.
right.
So for the third year of the course, whatever language you choose, you go to spend the year as an exchange student in that country to get fluent. So that's what he did. First and second year is just basic Nihongo study.
Right.
Then the third year get immersed in the language and become fluent.
Right.
And then back to Dublin for the fourth year and thesis writing and all that stuff. But anyway, he told us all about it, and he was like, you'd love Japan, guys. Seriously, we have to go. When we graduate, let's all go over. So that's what we did. And yeah, I loved it. And I went back to Ireland then for a few years, working as a graphic designer in Dublin City. And yeah, it was like I was the in-house designer in a printing company. So it was in the very center of Dublin city center. So every morning, I drive first gear, second gear, first gear, second gear, the rush hour traffic and raining,
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm remembering the weather in Japan and everything.
You're right.
The summers in Japan, I'm like, oh, I want to go back. So yeah, I saved up a bit of money and quit the job and came over. And so I was only intending to stay maybe a couple of years just to have something on my resume that looked kind of cool, worked as a designer in Tokyo. I thought that would look kind of cool. And then not so long after arriving, I met the woman that would become my wife.
Right.
So that kind of tied me to the country in a way.
Right. Yeah, as it does. Yeah.
And so I decided, well, if I'm going to be here for a while anyway, I wasn't sure how long, because we weren't sure if we were going to move back to Ireland and raise the kids there or whatever.
Right.
But I was thinking, yeah, if I'll be here for a while, I may as well get back into martial arts and do it properly. So I asked her as because Japan is kind of like the martial arts capital of the world in a way. There's so many, Aikido, Judo, Kenjutsu, Kyujutsu. There's so many different things.
It's a smorgasbord, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and so much to choose from. I mean, so I asked her advice. I said, what do you think is the best one? What's the best one to do? And at that point, my friend, the guy who had been here for the year and third year, he joined Hatsumi's dojo, the
Okay,
ninjutsu
yeah,
dojo.
the ninjutsu dojo,
Yeah. And he already had some experience in Ireland. So after a year there, I think he got his black belt.
Wow.
So I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that, you know. But when I mentioned it to my wife, she kind of just laughed. She's like, ninja, seriously, in the 21st century, you know.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, okay, you tell me what's the best one then. She said, well, if it's a Japanese art, you know, she said Muay Thai is pretty good, but it's not Japanese. So if you want to do a Japanese martial art, Kyokushin is the best one, probably the best one. It's a
There's a
style of
winner right
karate, but
there. She's a keeper.
it's the strongest one. And I was like, okay, well, if you say so, I believe you.
Yeah.
She has a showdown in Kendo, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, we were walking along the river of the Kandagawa,
Yeah.
where the old Masuda Dojo was,
Right.
and so we just went in, and the Sakurai Sensei was there at the time, and so she just said, "Do you take gaijin students?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we? You know?" And I said, "Well, I mean, he doesn't really speak any Japanese other than konnichiwa and ichi-ni-san, you know."
Yeah.
So he said, "Yeah, just try, just try." And he
Okay.
said, "Yeah, no problem. Well, of course, we have other foreign students, so no worries." So when I joined as a white belt, uh, yeah, I loved it straight away. It was really different from anything I'd done before, much more intense. And you know, I was like drenched with sweat after the keiko,
Right.
and I noticed that the amount of sweat on the students seemed to decrease as they got towards the senpai.
Ranks. Yeah.
So I was thinking, I want to get like those guys. I want to have their kind of stamina, you know,
Yeah.
at some point. So I thought this is going to be tough, but like, yeah, I'm willing to try it, you know. So in the beginning, in some ways, the language barrier was kind of an advantage in a way, because I couldn't understand the words they were saying when they explained it.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was I had to look really, really carefully at exactly, you know, the position of the ankles, the hips, the whatever, look in detail at everything.
Right.
Whereas, you know, if you're just listening, you could be getting the wrong idea in your head and doing it wrong. So I imitated what I was seeing.
Right.
And then obviously over time, you know, I got used to the terminology and I was like, oh yeah, I know what this one is. I know what this one is.
Right.
So I kind of learned Japanese in a way through the dojo.
Wonderful. So yeah, for the listeners, you know, I mean, it's a name that's, you know, pretty worldwide renowned. Your Shihan, Masuda Shihan, you know, and for those out there that have delved into the history of Kyokushin, you know, when we're all playing in the one big happy sandpit, what have you. One of the forerunners, really, you know, he was runner-up in I think it was the 5th World Tournament to Kenji Midori.
Yeah.
Has completed the Hyakunin Kumite, has won all Japan champs.
I think 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times, is regarded as, you know, one of the hardcore Kyokushin karateka of that era. And, you know, since then, over the years, from what I've seen, you know, at different stages, he's really poured a lot of his experiences and learnings into what he wants his students to get out of Kyokushin, you know. So, I mean, I guess that leads me to the next question. Being in such a dojo with such a a presence as his, you know, because I've met him a couple of times, this was years ago, but I mean, it was just the aura that, you know, that comes off him. And words really, but he just has a certain presence about him, and
he's kind
very
of
nice guy.
intimidating.
Yeah, but
Yeah, he's super nice, but he's like, yeah, it's like you said, it's like there's an aura or something about him.
Yeah,
like you don't want to mess with this guy, even
no.
though he's super nice.
So what I mean, I think the good thing you say here is that, you know, for those that are looking to come to Japan, but they think the language barrier is going to be, you know, as it says, a barrier. It's not so much if you take the right approach as you had in just learning through observation, and then, you know, sort of feeling a bit more comfortable picking up Japanese through your training. That's an ideal combination as well. But I mean, I guess So how long have you been with Masuda Shihan now?
Okay, well, the day I joined is actually really easy to remember because it was the 3rd of March, 2003.
Nice.
So on my membership card, it has like 030303 as the
Nice.
initiation date.
Good. Yeah.
Pretty easy to remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been member of his dojo since then.
Wow. 20
So
years
this
on at
year,
least.
this March was exactly 20 years.
Wonderful. So I guess a couple of questions there. What is it like to train with the man? I mean, for a lot of us that haven't had that opportunity, I mean, it would be great to get your insights into that.
Okay. Well, he had before he did karate, he was the captain of the judo club in his school, so he has judo
Right.
in his background as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things he did, this is like about maybe 10 years ago, was freestyle karate. This project idea he had, where the way when we do knockdown karate, it's like there's a rule set which has a lot of illegal. There's a lot of things you can't do.
Yeah.
Whereas when we do dento kata, when we study the kata, we learn all these techniques which we're not allowed to use in the kumite.
Right.
So obviously, if it's a strike that's supposed to kill someone or whatever, you don't want to have that in a sport. But there's loads of throws in the kata, for example. And he was thinking it's a motainai. He's saying it's a waste,
Yeah.
And if the idea of kumite tournament is you're testing yourself to see if these techniques you learn, if they're practical in some way, he was saying it's a waste to not include the throwing techniques as well.
Right.
So the freestyle karate was like basically the same as Kyokushin. So no punches to the face. I mean, the same as the knockdown.
Yeah.
No punches to the face, but they removed other restrictions. So you could do neck clinch.
Yeah.
And you could do from neck clinch. You were allowed to knee. In Kyokushin, you can knee, but not if you're grabbing the guy. You can't grab. So you're allowed to do that. If you had two hands clinch, you could knee in the stomach. If you had one hand, you could knee to the head. But not two. Two hands to the head was like, he thought that was a bit too violent, maybe, I don't know.
Right.
And you could also, so like in judo, there's no strikes, but you can grab the dogi and pull him and push and all this. So in freestyle karate, you were allowed to grab your opponent's dogi, but not keep a hold on it, like up to 2 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
But you could do certain things that you would be allowed to do in the knockdown rule set.
Okay. So did he have like a separate training session for that kind of stuff, or was it put into the normal sort of flow of a training session, or how did he go about implementing that?
Yeah, well, so basically it was within Keiko we would have a section. They would devote a section to ukemi, because he was the one thing he wanted to stress was that if you don't know how to fall, if you don't know how to break your fall, it's too dangerous to be thrown.
Right.
So we have to study ukemi, so that like if you're caught off balance and you're going to get thrown, you'll be able to protect your head and put all the force on your arms or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We did like my ukemi, ushiro ukemi, yoko ukemi.
Oh, wonderful.
My ukemi, like, and also roll and then stand up again.
Yeah.
Because if the guy sweeps you or whatever or throws you down and you stay down, it's a wazari, I think.
Right.
But if you're knocked down but you immediately get straight back up again, he doesn't get any points.
Right.
So we practiced how to do that,
Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting.
Right.
And in his own Koryu GI tournaments, it was like people could choose which to do. So you could compete in freestyle karate or classic rules, what he called classic.
Okay, so kind of like, and I've got a few mates that are also long haulers in Japan that have gone off and done different styles, and some of them have gone to Kudo or Daido Juku. So Azuma Jukucho, the late Azuma Jukucho, who I met once at Hombu for, I think it was how long ago is it now? Probably 12, 13 years ago, they were having a commemoration for Sorsai's passing away, and he turned up, and one beer turned into about 500, and
Yeah.
he's just built like a bear, and then he decides to do a mini sort of session when everyone's gone. Wonderful man. But when you watch the Daido Juku sort of tournaments and that, a lot of it, like you're talking about, they've got the headgear on. Yeah, they got punches to the head. They got the throws. They got the neck clinches. So with yours, were you wearing any protective gear, or was it just pretty much stock standard Kyokushin sort of rules with no pads and stuff?
We never used headgear, but there was a few kind of rules, like the way you do a neck clinch. So, there's a Muay Thai clinch where you kind of have your both hands on the back of the opponent's head.
Yeah.
On the back of his skull. You weren't allowed to do that. The reason you could only grab the neck, behind the neck, and the reason for that is that as you're reaching for a clinch, you could poke your fingers in the opponent's eyes. That was
right.
Shihan's reasoning.
Right.
So he said you can only slip it around the back of the neck, but we didn't have any headgear.
All right.
And there were no punches to the face. I think Daido Juku might have punches to the head.
Yeah, I think so. I think.
And Sanda also does, which is another quite similar style.
Right.
There were a few different things, like you could throw over your hip as long as the opponent didn't rise like more than 15 centimeters or something from the floor. Right. So you could do lots of takedowns, lots of different takedowns, but you weren't allowed to do like a pro wrestling suplex.
Dump on the
head. Pick the guy up and throw him on the mat. You weren't allowed to do that. So it was pretty interesting. Like we had different padding at different times. So I think in the first one we had, trying to remember now. I think in the first one there was no gloves, but there was shin pads.
Okay.
I think in the first Tokyo Open, and the second one is the opposite.
Okay.
We had, because at first he thought there's no face punch, so what's the point? In gloves?
Yeah.
But then there were a few still accidents because of the clinches and stuff. So then he decided, let's do gloves. And I can't remember why they took off the shin pads, but anyway.
All right. So with Masuda Shihan's dojo, so he would create those tournament opportunities where you had a choice.
Yeah, he was basically trying different things. Like it wasn't like this is the new way and this is the way it is. It was like, let's try this, let's try that, and try and create a new style. And there was a lot of people were interested. A lot of people came. We had competitors from IFK in France.
Right.
Also Andrea Stoppa from Italy. Shihan, he got involved with. He was in charge of the freestyle karate in Italy.
Right.
And we had Enshin guys from the USA.
Yeah.
And kickboxers. I think it was a Muay Thai fella. One taekwondo guy.
Yeah.
It was all kinds of people, and it was basically open to whoever wanted to go.
Right. Okay.
Except for maybe, as you said in the beginning, you don't want to get into political stuff, but like some leaders of organizations will not allow their units to compete in other things, right?
Yeah.
So only those guys were welcome to come, but their own Shihan said no, so there was nothing we could do with it.
Okay.
And basically, it was open to everybody. Anybody who wanted to enter could enter.
So is that still going now, or?
No, it's not. No, sadly, it's not. So it was it was really good at the time. For me, it was kind of the peak of the whole experience. It was really good, and for a lot of other members as well. But then he started to have other ideas about it, and like a lot of people a lot of non-Kyokushin people who criticize Kyokushin, like kickboxers or MMA guys or whatever, is because of the face punch thing.
Right.
They say if you don't punch to the face, it's not real fighting. Or whatever. Yeah. But they're always saying that, and Shihan was thinking, well, they kind of have a point,
Right.
That it's important to train for, especially to be able to avoid the head shots as well.
Right.
Like if you just forget about them, it's not good for a jisen, for a realistic
Yeah,
situation.
exactly.
Because in real life, there's no way you get two guys pummeling each other's bodies and doing low kicks for several minutes. It's not.
It's not
It's
realistic.
never going to happen. So then he had this new idea. It's a new thing called TS, Takushindo style,
Right.
where we now do head punches.
Oh, okay.
But he's taken away a lot of the freestyle stuff, like the throws and everything. Maybe because he thinks there's just too much in it.
Right. Right.
I think the idea in the future is when we get used to the headshots, maybe we can put the throws back in and have an even more inclusive thing.
Yeah, good.
I don't know, but yeah, it's a game changer. It's a huge game changer to have headshots.
It is. Oh, it is. Yeah. No.
You have to stay back and time it and go in like as fast as you can. And
You know, I can remember like I trained with Hasegawa Shihano, who's now known as Hasegawa Soshi, but back in the day when he was a bit younger, some of our training, you know, when he was demonstrating, he wasn't shy of punching people in the head to show how effective a technique was, or you know, the power of it all. But in order for us to get used to that headshot stuff, he used to start off with a game of slaps. And so basically we used to stand there and our warm-up was to go around trying to slap each other in the face really hard. Now it doesn't matter whether you close your fist or if you know how to get all that power in behind the shot and you can clock someone on the jaw, it's just as good as the good old fist to the head anyway. So and that goes back to a lot of the old stuff as well, you know, and there's a lot of people that talk about, you know, what Source High originally had when he first started off and how it then became more tournament focused, so on and so forth. And we could talk about that until we're black and blue in the face. But I mean, it's nice to hear that Masuda Shihan at different stages has always tried to think, okay, what could I include next that will benefit my students? What have I learned that I can now pass on that I think is relevant the here and now? So, I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity. I mean, if you were to sum up Masuda Shihan as an instructor, you know, what would you say are some of his qualities or some of his characteristics?
Well, he's not as conservative as other people would be. That like this is the way Kyokushin is done, and we can never change it, kind of thing. He's really open to trying different things, and also, you know, Kyokushin means ultimate truth. So he's always thinking like if we leave out certain things, then it's not the full picture. So he's always trying to basically just look for what works, you know. Look for the techniques that work.
That's great. I mean, because when we go back, and an interesting thing you just said now, you know, when you're doing the kata, and you know, there's some things that apply to kumite straight away, but there are some things like you say, the throws and the locks and the takedowns that are within the kata. Some people look at that separately as bunkai, and they'll stand off one another and they'll play the game and they'll do different routines. But what was nice to hear is that he was trying to bring some of that into an actual sort of fighting situation and show the sort of fluidity of it all. And like you said, his judo background, obviously, I mean, I'm originally from New Zealand, so back in New Zealand, Hanshi Doug Holloway, who came over to Japan and took Kyokushin back to New Zealand and was one of the instigators of spreading it throughout the country there, had a big background in judo as well. And to this day, you know, when they do camps over there, he can spend a session on how to do proper break falls and that. And I mean, it's not just for when you're throwing, but when you're swept or when you're taken to the ground, if you know how to actually fall properly, you save yourself a lot of damage, especially later on in gradings that go for a long time and you become a bit of a punching bag at the end of it. Knowing how to actually fall properly can actually benefit you. And so, I mean, I see a lot of good. So he's not as conservative as an instructor. Do you get a lot of time with him still to train? And
well, the thing is, the pandemic kind of threw a spanner in the works. You know, it kind of put a stop to a lot of things like the big tournaments and stuff. But it's still going on. We still do test matches every now and again. Like he tweaks the rules here and there. Like at one point, there was I think it was like trying to do it by points, so that one thing is another thing that he had in mind was that in knockdown rules, unless one guy knocks the other down, literally, it's kind of no clear who's winning, you know, because you usually get two guys who are able to take a lot of abuse, and you don't know which one is more hurt than the other or whatever, you know. And it's hard to see even because they're not reacting and because they're, you know, gaman, enduring whatever comes at them, that it's hard to tell who's landing more blows. It can be because it's all close, you know. It's all a chikama waza. So one thing about the TS is that he wants clear hits,
right?
So that if you stay back and time it, and then you move in for a headshot or you move in for a low kick or whatever, it's really clear for the judges and for the audience to see.
Okay. Yeah, so you go back to the days in the UK of the clicker tournaments. I don't know if you've heard much about them or.
I've heard of them, but I don't really know exactly how they work.
I don't know enough to make a comparison, but it sounds quite similar where there's a lot of.
I think so, like point
scoring. Yeah, good.
But one thing is though, it's not held back, so it's still full contact. Another thing is that if you do a strike to the body or to the headgear, and you can't hear anything, it's like the assumption is, oh, maybe it missed. Must have missed. But if you hear boom, if you hear a thud, it's like, oh, that hit, that was a clean hit. So it's not like Shotokan or whatever, or like Olympic style karate where you have to sandome, you have to stop it. It's not like that. Yeah, you do hit, but it just has to be a clean hit and technically good as well. He doesn't like Shihan doesn't like sloppy karate, and he was thinking Kyokushin was kind of moving in the direction of the biggest, strongest, you know, most stamina, most endurance guys were winning, but maybe not necessarily the most technically proficient at karate as an art, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So he wants it to be impressive to the spectators as well. Like, whoa, did you see that?
Yeah. So it's kind of like I guess, you know, with boxing, when you see boxing matches, you know, and there's a very clear point system, you know. So, you know, if they're landing clean shots, that's obviously a point, you know. There's different points for different techniques or, you know, for TKOs, etc., and so forth or whatever. So yeah, like you said, it produces something that's, I guess, for the people throwing themselves on the mat, they have to not only be the big, strong, you know, full of stamina kind of fighter, but they have to be of a certain level in terms of technique. Because if they're not going to score the points that they need. Okay, that's interesting to hear. So, do you think there'll be more tournaments like that coming up in the future? Now that
hopefully they will, because they've kind of dropped the whole mask thing in Japan now. So I'm sure it's all gonna come back. Yeah,
good. And so, what does your training entail now? I see you do a bit of teaching.
I teach 3 days a week.
Right. So, are you teaching adults, kids, a mixture of both?
I teach at Takadanobaba Dojo, which is part of Masuda Dojo, and there I teach kids and adults both classes, depending. It's on a rotation, so like a few times a month or once or twice a month I teach adults.
Excellent.
And then in the Akebonobashi Dojo, which is dojo I made myself, it's kids, teaching kids.
Okay, good. And what are the challenges of teaching kids in Japan then? For anyone,
the challenges?
Yeah.
Well, they're like kids anywhere, you know. I guess, especially the younger ones. It's like lining them up alone is difficult.
It's half the battle, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with kids that I've sort of had the chance to instruct over the years, I've always found that it's really important to make a bit of a competition out of it.
Yeah.
You know, their concentration span isn't the best anyway. So small chunks of the training, you know, with clear breaks, give them time to absorb what they're doing. But there's that sense of fun in it as well. You know,
of course.
You want to introduce them to that discipline, but you want them to keep coming. So it's that motivational factor as well, isn't it? So unlike adults where, you know, they're looking for that mixture of physical and mental growth, they want to make sense of their training and how that equates to other parts of their lives, so to speak. So they get sort of, I guess, absorbed in that philosophical part of it as much. But for kids, I think I read in one of your posts recently, and that's one thing I just want to talk about quickly is
Okay.
you were talking about the Dojo kun, right?
Yeah.
And that we recite the Dojo kun, and a Shihan of mine back in New Zealand at a camp once said, in English it starts off we will, all of the sentences, right? Now, he said, one of the Shihan said, well, why don't we just change that personally to I for a moment? Because really, you're reciting the dojo oath or the dojo kun to make sense of it for yourself. So what are you going to do? Are you going to strive? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? So personalize it. But what you've done is created a kid's version of a few of the key points, not a dojo kun, but something to revisit at the end of training. Could you perhaps just enlighten us on what you've done there? Because it sounded really good.
Okay. So it's based on the Kyokushin Dojo Kun. And so I explained for new students, I explained to them that there's a proper one for adults, but that it's pretty difficult, even for Japanese adults. The language is kind of deep.
Yes, yeah.
So so it's pretty, it's impossible for kids to grasp. So I was thinking I'll try and get the key points from the Dojo Kun and kind of condense them into a simple version.
Right.
And so I went to Masuda Shihan because I thought, I could get in trouble for this. It's like kateni, it means like without permission altering the Kyokushin Dojo Kun. So I went to Shihan and said, I have this idea, and I gave him what I had written out.
Yeah.
I said, is it okay if I use this Akebonobashi Dojo? And he's like, oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, they'll really understand that a lot better. And he said the only thing is don't say this is the Kyokushin Dojo Kun, because if they think it is, if they go to a different Kyokushin Dojo in the future, they'll be like, what's that? That's not the Dojo Kun, So he said just call it the Akebonobashi Dojo Kun. You're
right.
the one for your dojo. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
And
so that's what we do.
What kind of points do you try and keep as an essence in that for the kids? What kind of things are you talking about in it?
Okay, so the first line is hitotsu wareware wa ishokenmei renshu suru koto. That's just I will train hard to do my best.
Yeah.
Ishokenmei means singularly, like focused on one thing. Next one is hitotsu wareware wa budou no imi o manabu koto, which is I will learn, or we will learn the meaning of the Budo way.
Right.
And so for that line, at first I was thinking benkyo, which means study. We will study the meaning of the Budo, the martial way.
Yeah.
But then when I thought about it, I was like, I don't know, study, it seems almost like an observer looking at something separate from yourself and learning about it. But then I thought, no, maybe let's use the word learn. So I will learn the meaning. Meaning for me, I'll internalize it so I can apply it to myself. And so a lot of Japanese people do that, even if they're not in martial arts specifically.
Yeah,
they study the philosophy of it.
Yeah.
So like Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings.
Yeah.
That's businessmen often read that because they know like this guy was a winner. He was a succeeder. He succeeded. He won every sword fight he ever got involved in, allegedly. So they want to know what kind of guy was he? What were his thought processes?
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking. That they should learn something they can apply for their life.
Oh, that's great.
And then the third line is a rule on memory is just I'll protect. Memory means protect. I'll keep to the rules. I won't break the rules, basically.
Yeah.
And then me ue o uyamai, which means respect your seniors or elders.
Yeah.
Me is I and ue is up.
Yeah.
So it's like, people you look up to or people you should look up to. So for kids, I explained, that this means your teachers, your parents, a policeman if he stops you on your bicycle or whatever. And so the idea of that is not like teaching you have to be bootlickers or something like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but rather it's about in Japanese culture, the senpai kohai relationship.
Yeah.
So people respect people who came before them or, have more knowledge of a certain thing. So yeah, just to teach that, don't
Well,
disrespect the people who came before you.
so you're basically taking the essence of the original Dojo-kun. And I mean, if anyone's studied the influence that Miyamoto Musashi had on Sosai, Sosai's, his 11 mottos, and one of them, well, a lot of them he's taken from what he learned, not what he studied, what he absorbed, what he internalized from looking at Miyamoto Musashi's life, and I teach at a university here. And the funny thing happened the other day, because you just reminded me how you've taken something very intense and complicated and simplified it for that group, which is the kids, right? So for the university students, I said, okay, so I've been doing karate for 40 odd years. Okay. In my style of karate, there's a saying, Bu no michi ni okeru jiko hansei wa, right? So self-reflection in the world of in the path of martial arts. And that's one of the mottos, right? So it's a chance. So that self-reflection is always a chance to develop further. And so I said, what you're doing in class with me, what you've learned today, what you've picked up, what you've absorbed, go back and just mull on it for a while. And what have you actually gotten out of it? What went well today in class? And it could be an academic class, it could be karate training, but without that self-reflection, you're really, it's blocking that chance for further growth. So you've always got to self-reflect. And I mean, Shihan Cameron Quinn says this well. He always asks three questions to his students. One of them is, what went well in your training today? Always start with that positive reflection. Two, what didn't go so well? So reflect on the good and the bad. But then that leads to goal setting. And the final one being, well, what are you going to do about what didn't go so well? Is it something you could fix yourself? Is it going to one of your senpai and asking for some advice? Is it going to one of your sensei or someone? And so what you're talking about there is that respect for your elders is also shown by you actually being able to go and ask for advice or help with something. So, we live in this martial arts world, but if we can take it out of that and put it into other parts of our life, as those kids grow, they're going to make more sense of it philosophically later on. But first they experience it firsthand. It's that. And because we both speak and understand Japanese, it's easier for us to throw about these expressions. But Japanese are very much about what they call hada de kanjiru, right? That you've got to feel it. You can't just read it from a book. You've got to throw yourself into it and feel it. And I think what you've done with that, simplifying it for your dojo, a set of very simple guidelines, the kids, A, are able to repeat it, B, over time, internalize it, not just produce the language, but they internalize it, and then it has that personal meaning for them. So good on you for doing that. I thought it was worthwhile bringing up because it's something that I think we could do overseas as well, because I mean, the dojo kun even in English is a bit of a mouthful. And at the end of a long training, you're sort of struggling to get all the words out. So for kids, I can't imagine how hard it would be. Okay, well, before we finish up, I guess, for you being another long hauler in Japan, I mean, 20 years is pretty impressive. It's a big investment. But you're like me, you're a bit of a cultural link pin with people coming to and from for different reasons, different walks of life. But when it comes to training, I mean, is there any bits of advice you would give? It could be anything from how to conduct yourself when visiting someone's dojo, or what to sort of expect from your training coming to Japan. Is there anything you could sort of give us some advice on?
Okay. Well, I think one thing is don't be afraid of approaching dojos, even if it's Kyokushin or even if it's Muay Thai. I've done cross training in the Muay Thai gym here. Everyone is super friendly, and basically, if somebody is genuinely interested in a style or an art or whatever, the teachers are pleased. Oh, you're interested? That's great. You want to know more? I'll teach you. So yeah, just be respectful and be serious about it as well, because it pays off. If you're serious about it, it pays off, and if they know you're really trying. And another thing as well is, if you're looking at the brown belts and black belts and thinking, oh, yeah, I'll never be at their level, just remember that they were white belts at some stage too.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's difficult for everyone in the beginning, so don't worry about what's difficult. Just keep trying your best, and your senpais they'll know that. They'll know that you're really trying, and they'll help you out. They'll be like, they won't be like, no, 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 that's all wrong. They'll be saying, well, what, I think if you did it this way, it would be better. And they show you how to fix your mistakes.
Excellent. Nice.
Uh,
An interesting thing here, because the way you use the word senpai is the way I use it, but because of all these instructional titles overseas,
oh yeah.
like, so, in dojos overseas, once you get to shodan, then you're given a teaching title of senpai, or that's how you're referred to. And then from sandan and yondan, it's sensei, and then godan and above it's shihan, right? But senpai to us means our seniors, anyone that has joined the dojo before us. And I could be a blue belt and you could be a yellow belt, and you've started before me, so you're my senpai. So when we say the word senpai in Japan in Japanese, it's referring to anyone that's started their journey before us, that they're a bit of a mentor, but someone who looks out for us. It's a big responsibility. And like you said before, that senpai kohai, that senior junior system, is something that if you learn to show the right attitude, the proper etiquette, and that's just through training hard, then yes, everyone will welcome you with open arms, and they will take an extra 5 or 10 minutes after training to help you with little things. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to the instructor all the time, but if you build that community, even if you're here for a short time, it's all in the attitude. And once they see you're serious, they're willing to give you the time of day to help you out with any questions. And
yeah.
So it's like you say, it's a wonderful place that way, and that sort of, that sense of community goes beyond ranks and what have you. It's just everyone's sweating, bleeding, and whatever together, for the good of getting better at something, or feeling better about yourself, or contributing to building a better dojo or what have you. So some good advice there. Good. Well, thanks, Philip, for that. I mean, so you're based in Tokyo.
Yeah,
Next time I'm up, we'll grab a beer, and I'll come, if I
sure,
come along and try and get some training in with you. Sounds great. I'd like to learn the kids dojo kun if I could. And
yeah. I'll send you a copy of it.
yeah, wonderful. No, but and if anyone else is out there, as you would have heard from today's talk, it's it is a country that, if you go about it the right way, all these doors open, and
Yeah.
you're testament to that. So I guess in ending, what lies ahead for Philip? For you, what lies ahead of you? Here for a while
Well,
still, or?
oh yeah, I intend to stay. Yeah. So I'm nidan at the moment. I was gonna go for Sandan just before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
So that was put on the back burner. But I hope to go for Sandan maybe within the next year.
Nice. Good luck with
Hopefully.
that. Yeah, I'm sure with Masuda Shihan it'll be a good grading for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another part of
And
the
one last thing, just
Sure.
because since you're talking about the dojo kun, something that I'm sure a lot of your listeners already know, but maybe some don't know. But there's a very famous novel called Musashi about Miyamoto Musashi, written by Eiji Yoshikawa, a
Yes.
famous novelist, and it's described as a historical novel. It's not a biography. It's not like pretending this is exactly what happened, but it's like a novel based on his life.
Yeah.
But it was a super popular book, and Sosai himself was a huge fan of it. So after the 3 years of Mitsumine or in the mountains,
In the mountains.
I think he wanted to write a dojo-kun, but he wanted to be better than any other karate dojo-kun, deeper. And his idea was, I think nobody could write it better than Eiji Yoshikawa. So he actually like sought him out and went to his place and like parked outside. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. And he's like, "Help me to write the dojo-kun." And at first, Yoshikawa was like, "Who is this guy?" You know, and was like freaked out. But he was really, Sosai was really driven and persistent. And so in the end, they wrote it together. So I don't know if that may not be common knowledge, but so that's why the language in it is pretty special. It's
it is
written by a professional novelist together with Sosai, with his philosophy. So
yeah, no, it's great. You just reminded me of that. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that actually. But yeah, no, it's something a lot of the old guard would remember, I'm sure. And this is one of the objectives of this podcast, is that we get to talk to people like yourself, and we're reminded of these other stories that get sort of put to the to the side or aren't handed down, and it's just nice to be reminded of things like that. So yeah, like you said, a lot of history in it, a lot of significance, and I guess for everyone, it's what we take out of it, personally. And it goes back to what you're saying before, your sort of drive to learn. But I think another key word that comes from today's conversation is internalizing the experience, and it's not always the language barrier that'll stop you. It's how open or closed your eyes are. So you can learn a lot from just watching and mimicking, and then it slowly becomes habit and makes sense without the necessity of any explanation. So
KUMITE is a great teacher as well.
isn't it? Yes, it is. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, no, rank has no significance whatsoever when it comes to that. I think the belt is just something we tie, helps us keep our uniform tidy. But no, KUMITE is one of the big testers, that's for sure. Yeah, still feel that today. Excellent, Philip. Thank you for your time.
All right, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Great, thank you. Us.
Us.